All right, settle in, everyone, because we're diving deep today.
Mhm.
We've got a fantastic stack of source material right here, brought to us by you, our listener.
Yeah, this is a good one.
And it gives us a real roadmap into something incredibly fundamental. The Georgia K-12 English Language Arts Standards for grades 3 through 5.
Mm.
Specifically, we're zeroing in on the foundations and language domains.
That's right. And you should think of this document as kind of the architect's blueprint, really, for building strong literacy skills at this pretty critical age.
Right.
It's designed for educators, obviously, laying out not just what skills and knowledge students need in grades 3, 4, and 5,
Yeah.
but also giving these concrete examples of how to teach those concepts, effective strategies and clear indicators of what student learning actually looks like in practice.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then is to unpack that blueprint.
Yeah.
We want to understand what foundational reading and language skills really entail for students in these grades. Highlight the key ideas, the specific skills Georgia expects, and maybe pull out some insights or surprising details you might not expect from a standards document.
Definitely some interesting stuff in there.
Get ready to see the intricate building blocks of reading and writing laid out. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. So, starting with the foundations domain. Its core purpose, as the document really emphasizes, is building that absolute necessary base.
The foundation for the foundation.
Kind of, yeah. Because without this strong base, achieving those more dynamic literacy practices you need for, solid reading comprehension later on, it becomes a real challenge.
Makes sense. And the first major piece of that foundation is phonics. The source points us right to standard 35.fp4, which covers decoding and encoding. This isn't just ABCs anymore, is it?
Oh, far from it. At this level, it's really about students mastering the relationship between sounds, the phonemes, and the letters, or groups of letters that represent them, the graphemes. And they use this to read, which is decoding, and to write, or encode words. The key here, especially for grades 3 to 5, is moving beyond just simple one-syllable words.
Right.
They're tackling multisyllabic words, understanding different syllable types like closed, open vowel teams, and effectively using common prefixes and suffixes.
That feels like a big jump from, say, first grade. How does the source suggest teachers actually make that happen in the classroom? Like, what are some strategies?
Well, the document is actually quite practical here. It suggests things like breaking words down into smaller, manageable units.
Them up.
Exactly. Whether that's syllables or affixes or even specific spelling patterns. It also recommends engaging students in activities like word sorts, but specifically focused on prefixes and suffixes attached to base words.
Okay.
And a crucial point is using decodable texts. But importantly, after the relevant phonetic skills have been taught.
So they can practice what they just learned.
Right, so students can actually apply it. It also mentions interactive word walls, morphology journals where kids explore roots and affixes, and multi-sensory stuff too,
Right.
like building words with magnetic tiles or maybe using hand motions for sounds, things to make it more concrete.
That focus on word parts, morphology, seems really central, and the evidence of student learning section has a great example with the word election. Could you walk us through that?
Yeah, it shows a teacher guiding students through a word family. They start with elect, right? Discuss its meaning, its form. Then they introduce the suffix ion. The teacher would ask students to combine them, make election, and then specifically draw attention to how adding ion changes the pronunciation of that final T
Oh, right, from at in elect.
to a shesh sound in
Actor Jeff-
election. Exactly. And the document explicitly notes that this also connects to grammar. Adding ion changes the verb elect into the noun election.
Wow, so it's sound, structure, meaning, grammar,
Yeah.
all tied together.
Precisely. It's a really neat example of how intertwined it all is. It shows phonics isn't just sounding out. It's understanding how adding pieces changes the whole word.
Okay, great example. Sticking with foundations, the next big idea is fluency. This is standard 35 pot FF1, oral and silent reading fluency. Why is fluency so critical by grades 3 to 5?
Well, fluency means reading accurately, at an appropriate pace, and with expression. So the why is simple but really powerful. If a student is struggling to sound out every single word, their brain is just so busy decoding.
There's no room left for understanding.
Exactly. There's very little cognitive energy left for actually understanding the meaning of the text. So achieving fluency where word recognition becomes more effortless, more automatic, it frees up their minds to focus on comprehension.
Makes total sense.
And the standard also points out that by third grade, students are expected to begin self-correcting as they read, which shows they're becoming more aware of their own reading process.
Okay, the document uses a few key terms here. Can you clarify automaticity and prosody?
Sure. Automaticity is that effortless word recognition we just talked about. Seeing a common word like the or and knowing it instantly without needing to sound it out.
Got it. And prosody.
Prosody is about reading with appropriate expression. It's using your voice, your pitch, your tone, your pauses to reflect the meaning and feeling of the text. Paying attention to punctuation to guide your pacing.
So not reading like a robot.
Definitely not. The document also lists other look-fors, like phrasing, grouping words naturally, using correct pauses, or juncture, varying tone, maintaining high accuracy. They aim for 95% or above, and that self-correction piece.
So it's not just about reading fast then. It's about reading well, reading meaningfully. What kind of strategies help build this specific kind of fluency?
The source lists several good ones. Modeling is huge, teachers, reading aloud fluently and actually talking about why they paused there or why they used a certain tone.
Okay.
Repeated reading is a classic strategy. Just rereading a short passage helps build speed and accuracy. Partner reading and choral reading aloud together provide supported practice too.
Right.
The document also suggests explicitly teaching students how to parse or chunk sentences to understand where natural pauses should occur, and teaching concrete strategies for fixing mistakes when they stumble.
Okay, here's one that might surprise some listeners. Handwriting. The standards explicitly include Standard 3 to 5 on FH3 for reading cursive and Standard 3 to 5 FH4 for writing cursive in these grades. Why is cursive still a focus?
Yeah, it's interesting. The document frames it as a component of foundational literacy. The idea is it enables students to read certain things, like maybe historically significant documents or perhaps notes from older relatives, and also communicate in a specific format.
So there's a progression.
There is. For reading cursive, it describes a clear path. Third graders start with phrases and sentences. Fourth graders move to short texts. And by fifth grade, they should be able to read a variety of texts written in cursive.
And for writing it.
Similar progression. Third grade focuses on correctly forming individual letters, connecting them properly, and spacing. This extends to writing full sentences across lines in fourth grade, with the expectation of, reasonably efficient cursive writing by fifth grade.
Can you give a taste of the evidence examples for cursive? Like, how do students show they can read it?
The examples are very specific, very task-oriented. It might be as simple as identifying a specific cursive letter, say an R within a word,
Okay.
or finding a target word like Saturday in a cursive passage, or reading a short cursive phrase aloud like practice makes perfect, or even doing a grammar task within cursive text, like underlining the nouns in a sentence written in script.
And how do they show they can write it?
Evidence for writing mastery could be demonstrating correct letter formation during guided practice, or successfully connecting letters to write their own name in cursive, or maybe writing entire sentences with correct spacing between words and on the lines. The strategies mentioned involve teaching letters in groups based on similar strokes and encouraging kids to use cursive sometimes, maybe in journal entries or something.
Okay, interesting that it's still explicitly there and broken down like that.
Now let's shift gears slightly. We've talked about the mechanics. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of how language itself works, the language domain.
Right.
This is where students learn the structures and conventions of standard English. They analyze grammar, and they build their vocabulary to understand and use language more effectively.
Got it. Within language, first up is grammar conventions. This includes Standard 3 to 5.lgc.1 on grammar, usage and mechanics, they call it GUM, and Standard 3 to 5.lgc.2 on syntax. How does the document approach GUM for these grades?
So GUM, that's Standard 3 to 5 LGC.1, is framed as applying the rules of standard English. And this isn't just about being correct for correctness' sake.
It's functional.
Exactly. It's about ensuring comprehension when reading and clarity when communicating, both in writing and speaking. And the scope listed in the source for grades 3 to 5 is actually quite broad. It covers everything from contractions and irregular plural nouns.
Like mice, not mouses.
Right. to different verb types like helping verbs and linking verbs, how to compare adjectives and adverbs, specific punctuation like commas for direct address or hyphens for line breaks, plus how to format titles of works. It's a lot.
It is. The evidence section for GEO1 gives a really good example that shows the complexity they're starting to introduce. Collective versus abstract nouns.
Yes, that's a great one. It shows a teacher moving beyond just simple noun identification to introducing these more nuanced categories. The teacher would explain collective nouns like committee, representing a group.
Or team, or flock.
Right, and abstract nouns like love, representing an idea or feeling. Then students would categorize words like team, courage, pride, swarm, honesty, family, peace, crowd.
Okay.
And the example cleverly highlights how a word like pride can actually function as both a collective noun, a pride of lions, and an abstract noun, the emotion. It really shows the importance of context.
That level of detail definitely goes beyond just defining noun. Okay, how about syntax? Standard 3 to 5 LGC.2. This is sentence structure, right?
Correct. Syntax is all about understanding how sentences are constructed. The goal here is really twofold. One, to help students better comprehend the increasingly complex texts they're expected to read. And two, to empower them to compose more varied and effective sentences in their own writing. Understanding how words fit together really changes everything.
The document has a very memorable, almost funny example for syntax, starting with, "The fox ran up the hill."
It's a great way to show the progression. They start with that simple sentence. Students might manipulate word cards maybe, or answer basic who, what, where questions about it. Then the teacher guides them to expand it. Perhaps creating a compound sentence by adding a conjunction and comma. The fox ran up the hill so he could catch the rabbit.
Adding complexity.
Right. Then the next step is adding detail with adjectives and adverbs. The sly fox quickly ran up the hill so he could catch the unobservant rabbit.
Hmm.
And the discussion would focus on how adding those specific words and changing the structure alters the meaning, how it engages the reader differently.
That makes sense.
And the source even includes that classic non-example comparison, Robin ate the banana pudding versus the banana pudding ate Robin.
Yes. That definitely proves why word order matters.
Instantly shows why syntax is crucial.
Okay, so we've covered the mechanics of words and the structure of sentences. The third big idea in the language domain is vocabulary. This is covered across 3 standards. Standard 3.5.LV.1 on general, academic, and specialized vocabulary, 3.5.LV.2 on word analysis, and 3.5.FLB3 on meaning and purpose. What's the overall aim here?
Well, the document really aims for students to continuously expand and deepen their vocabulary, obviously, but also to build strong word analysis skills and become pretty adept at determining or clarifying word meanings. A really significant emphasis is placed on studying words in context.
Not just memorizing lists.
Exactly, not just lists, and learning to use words with precision in their own speaking and writing.
The evidence section for that first vocabulary standard, LV1, has a really detailed example using the word raggedy. It shows a multi-step process.
Yes, it's a good illustration of teaching for depth, not just surface level. The teacher introduces the word raggedy, writes it, has students write it, they read it together,
Okay.
and then collaboratively define messy, torn, and looking a little dirty. Then they use it in a clear sentence, like, you can't run a marathon in raggedy shoes.
Right, concrete example.
Crucially, they then ask students to explain the meaning in that specific sentence context. And they even use non-examples like clean and tidy to clarify what raggedy is not.
So it's about really building a robust understanding of that word.
Precisely.
That makes sense. And Standard 3.5 LV2 specifically focuses on word analysis within vocabulary.
Exactly. This standard really hones in on breaking down words. The focus is on understanding how adding affixes, prefixes, and suffixes to base words or roots, the morphemes, changes their meaning, and how that skill can help unlock the meaning of unfamiliar words they encounter.
The cover example from the evidence really illustrates this, doesn't it?
It does. Students start with the base word cover, understand its meaning to hide from view, use it in a sentence, maybe identify its part of speech.
Okay.
Then they add the prefix dis, which means not, or opposite of, to create discover. They explore how the meaning transforms from hiding something to finding something. Then maybe add the suffix ed to make it discovered, and note the change to past tense. It's a really powerful skill for decoding meaning in those increasingly complex texts they'll be reading.
Definitely. Okay, finally, vocabulary standard 3.5 LV3 is about meaning and purpose. How does that build on the others?
This standard is really where students bring it all together. They make connections between words, using both morphology, that word analysis piece we just talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and context clues from the surrounding text to figure out meanings. It also emphasizes using reference materials effectively, like dictionaries and thesauruses.
So this is where they learn the subtle art of word choice. What about words that seem similar but aren't quite the same? Like the example in the source: warm, hot, and scorching.
That's a perfect example of a key concept in this standard, understanding shades of meaning.
Nuance.
Exactly. The document shows a teacher using those synonyms in sentences. It is warm outside today. It is hot outside today. It is scorching outside today. They then lead a discussion asking students how the meaning changes with each word, highlighting how each represents a greater intensity of heat than the last.
Right, getting stronger each time.
Yeah. Other suggested strategies include things like brainstorming synonyms for a word like happy, and then arranging them by intensity, showing students how choosing a more precise synonym can express meaning more accurately, and also how synonym choice impacts the tone of writing, comparing, say, the book was good versus the book was fantastic.
Wow. Okay, so stepping back and looking at everything we've covered today, it's a lot. From breaking down sounds and letters to reading cursive, understanding sentence architecture, navigating subtle word nuances, it feels incredibly comprehensive.
It really is.
So what does this all mean? What's the big picture takeaway from this deep dive into the Georgia ELA standards for grades 3 to 5?
Well, I think the crucial insight is that while we've discussed these as separate standards or domains, they are deeply interconnected.
They aren't silos.
Not at all. They aren't isolated skills taught separately. They are the foundational building blocks. The phonics and fluency provide the mechanics.
Right.
The grammar and syntax provide the structure, and the vocabulary provides meaning. Mastery in each area supports and strengthens the others, and collectively, they enable students to read complex texts with deep understanding, communicate clearly and precisely, both in writing and speaking. Ultimately, these are the skills that empower them to keep learning throughout their lives.
It really lays out the intentional progression of building skilled readers and writers. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into these essential Georgia ELA standards.
It's been fascinating, actually, to explore the detail and the practicality laid out in this guide for educators. It truly highlights the complexity of what might seem like basic skills at this level.
Indeed. And seeing how foundational these skills are and how they interlock, like you said, understanding prefixes helps with both decoding and vocabulary, or how fluency frees up that crucial brain power for comprehension. It kind of changes your perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. Which leads to this thought for you to mull over after our deep dive today. Given how dependent complex literacy is on mastering these detailed, interconnected components we've talked about, how does appreciating these individual building blocks change the way you think about the overall, seemingly seamless act of reading and writing that proficient adults often take for granted?